Checking in, sir? Or, by the looks of your tie-dye, should I say, hey man, are you about to lay down some verification of oppression to see the cosmic light that we all know as fish? Yeah.
Yeah, man. I took a twirly bird all the way to Colorado to check out the gnarly cool vibes of this 3-day musical extravaganza. See, folks, I really am bilingual.
Do you live, eat, and sleep the hotel industry? Looking to brush up on your game? You've come to the right place. Welcome to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the No Vacancy podcast with me, your host, Glenn Hausman. I am excited to have you here today. I'm coming on at you from a mystery location to be revealed any minute. Before we get started, I want you to be able to check out novacancynews.com. Putting up a lot of great videos right now from the Global Business Travel Association meeting. You're going to absolutely love those videos. Great insight from a lot of amazing industry professionals. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that this show is brought to you in part by Duetto, the revenue strategy technology platform thousands of hotels are using to make more money. Go check out getrevenueresults.com. That's getrevenueresults.com. You're going to check out an amazing video about how hotel management teams can collaborate and make more money. Actually, that's the name of the video for an amazing coincidence that we have right there. Wow, I'm having a little rough time this morning. So what you're going to do is you're going to watch this video. You're going to see follow an adventure of a committed team of hoteliers out there. They are confused, they don't know what's going on, but when they commit to a revenue optimization strategy, their world changes in ways they never imagined, and you're going to love what they have to say. Also, I want to thank Red Roof for being a sponsor of the show. Very excited to have them aboard and share their messaging every single week. Now, we've been doing a lot of great stuff over here, and if you haven't checked out our newest series, Checking In with Anthony and Glenn, well, you're going to be remiss. I've partnered with Travel Channel superstar and Hotel Impossible star Anthony Melchiori on this brand new show, and each and every week, twice a week, in fact, we're bringing you things to help empower your career, empower your business, empower your life to be more successful and exciting, and we're super passionate and excited about that show. Check it out on iTunes, Google Play, all of those other places with it. Man, that's going pretty good, and very soon we're going to be launching a 20-episode hotel design podcast, and don't forget our hotel tech podcast either. Man, thank God I like to talk a lot, because I've got a lot of these shows now that I hope you guys are enjoying and loving. Drop us a line, glenn@rouse.media, or find me on social media @travelingglenn. So I'm down in Miami, Florida here today. I'm attending the annual conference for HP Hotels, where I had the opportunity to do a keynote speech yesterday, moderate a panel, and I said to myself, I've got to get these guys on the show. So one of my favorite folks on the development side, Mr. Kerry Ranson, Chief Development Officer with HP Hotels, is here today. Kerry, how you doing, man?
Good. Glad to be on the show with you today, and we're glad to have you part of the conference, our 16th conference this year.
Yeah, it was really great to be here. You got a great engaged audience. Now, as we're recording this, and of course, all of you listening to it when it's broadcast, it's going to be back in the past, a good week or so back in the past. I'm excited because this afternoon I'm doing a social media discussion on how to help hotels with the do's and don'ts of social media. So I think that's going to be a whole lot of fun. And putting this presentation together, I learned a lot about that and realized that we could all do a little bit better of a job at social media. So hopefully your audience will like it. But, Kerry, as Chief Development Officer, I'm curious as to what you're thinking about these days. Where are we with the state of the industry? What's going on in the world of hotel development these days? And what are some of the top-of-mind things that you're thinking? I know that's a whole lot to absorb in one statement. So let's just start with this. How's the deal-making environment out there? What's going on?
It's plentiful. And at times probably hard to keep up. I think it's probably more importantly, what's the right deals and your time expenditure of what are we looking at, but I think trying also the right deals for our clients and our partners of what fits our mold as far as a company and trying to fit into what we do. So, right markets, right type of segments, how do we service them? And so trying to pair those together with some of our existing partners and clients, but also the newer groups that have come into our segment over the last several years. It's been a whole nother investor that's come into the hospitality circle that's been introduced from private and public equity that had never been in the hospitality side. And so trying to reintroduce or introduce ourselves to them and provide our services as well as that what we do has got value to it for what they're looking for. And so in a day in and day out basis, you're out there looking to try and provide sourcing of deals.
Yeah.
And basically like a deal junkie,
Yeah.
trying to find something out there that's got a silver bullet.
It seems, you say deals are plentiful, yet I'm seeing a slow up in actually deals that are happening. I'm feeling like even though the deals are out there, there's a lot of rabid competition for individual deals, and it's becoming a lot harder to actually get those conversations going and get them to the finish line.
Yeah, well, I think there's a lot of things behind it. I think we still have a bit of valuing that's probably not baseline right, where I think there's an expectation for people that properties are still overvalued. So when you get in there to try and make something happen and to make a project get across the finish line, to make it underwrite at the right cap rates and to look at it and say, what's the exit on it?
Right.
You can't make it happen. And so to your point, a drag. And what may have taken 60 to 90 days to get a deal done at times takes, potentially 120 to even 180. And then sometimes it gets put on the table. It may not come back till another year. I mean, that happened to us with one last year in outside of New Orleans. We had a project that we looked at and then came back to us after we had initially looked at it. Nobody made an offer. And then about 18 months later, the ownership group came back to us on our offer and wanted to negotiate an offer we had made previously.
Yeah, that's interesting. So a lot of headaches. So I guess the good news is sales of Excedrin must be rising amongst the hotelier community. But for you, when you say overvalued, is that coming more from a perception of I've got this property, I'm feeling really good about myself, maybe I'm not really being reasonable?
Yeah, I think it's that as well as seeing some of the things that have been traded in other markets and expect that, well, if something in San Francisco is worth a 6 cap, well, hey, I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, it's also worth a 6 cap. And there are those expectations at times. And so I think people go in with, unrealistic expectations.
So do you just sit on the sideline and wait like the example that you just gave, or are you able to shape expectations with certain groups of owners or operators?
No, you definitely shape the expectations, but I think that's also part of what we do too, is try and work, I think, the avenues and the relationships we have with peers that are out there to try and also work deals that, maybe somebody's at a life cycle of, I want to get out of the industry. Maybe, a certain asset that they potentially built 15 years ago is coming up for a PIP and they don't want to deal with it. So maybe we can get in front of it to where they don't want to go through the hassle of a brokerage firm, and we can end up helping to trade that inside of our circle. I mean, we're doing that currently between 2 of our existing clients. That one gentleman is ready to retire, and we had an existing client that's trying to expand a portfolio, and we were able to trade inside of our family to be able to continue to manage an asset, but also to be able to have someone else, exercise leaving their asset.
That's pretty virtuous circle right there. You're a winner because it's not sold to another owner, and you don't have to resell them on a management deal, and it makes one of your existing clients happier, and you already have that relationship in place. Talk about off-market deals. That's pretty interesting. It seems to me, though, when I use those words, off-market deals, every conference that I go to, the most recent financial conference being in June at the NYU Hospitality Investment Conference, that seemed to be the word on the street. Off-market deals. Everybody wants those deals. Nobody wants a deal once I get an email saying that this deal is available out there. Why is that? And what's wrong with those hotels that are, coming at me in my email box?
Everybody else is looking at them.
Right.
And that's the best part is, of all the true friends in the industry we have, you can pick up a phone and get a call from Scott Stevens with HREC, and he says, I got an off-market deal for you. And as much as I love Scott, he's also called 10 other friends to say, I've got an off-market deal for you.
Right, of course, because one of those friends have got to come through with him, and he'd be foolish not to try to do his best. So even if somebody brings an off-market deal to you, it's certainly not a done deal.
Exactly. And so but what it does do, though, is can you get a front-hand look before you have 50 other groups out there that are looking at it, and potentially before it actually does get commercially marketed. Potentially you're even making offers before this thing actually gets put to an email.
Right. So, all right, if you're making offers and stuff, are you typically I know it's hard to say typical in this, but are you typically the only player that's involved, or are you usually competing against other folks at this particular time in the cycle? And maybe you don't even know you're competing against other folks. Is that possible?
It depends on what the deal is. If we're in a typical campaign that it is a marketed deal, we absolutely are competing against others. You could be with as many as probably 4 to 5. If it's a deal that potentially was so quoted off market, then it's maybe you and 2 other people. But I think with the ability of an investor that we may have and be partnered with, if we know and have a relationship with a potential seller that we have the ability to close, then we would be the only one on the deal. However, we've also been in certain deals with new clients that don't have a history and have unfortunately been 2 or 3 because a seller, for the right reasons, making sure that they're going to be covered and making sure that the asset's selling, because they don't know whether this particular investor we're working with can actually close. So they'll have protecting to be able to have 2 or 3 other deals lined up.
Right. So when you are competing against others for deals, when do you know when it's time to pull out? And it's especially got to be difficult if you have a new investor that's coming in and you want that management contract, but you can't have it unless that deal is done. So how do you not let that influence that decision making to make sure you don't steer anyone the wrong way, just so you can secure that contract?
I think that's a great question, because for us, we're first and foremost have always been a third-party management contract company. And so although we invest in deals, we put equity into deals, we are at our core a third-party management contract company. So if we were to steer someone into a potential value-add component project, yet we're just being greedy to get the 3-year or 5-year management deal and it not be good, and we work ourselves into it, and then 2 years into a deal and it's not underwriting at what we promised, then we're not getting any more deals from this particular investor, as well as getting bad reputation in the market.
Right.
So for us, look, I'll give you a great example. We had a smaller Homewood project up in the Midwest that we worked hard with one of our existing clients. We were in a final 2 in a bidding process. We probably, in our opinion, went probably about $500,000 more aggressive in the underwriting to get the deal done. We extended our hold term from 3 to 5 years on it, and with that, we thought it was a stretch. And ownership came back to us and said, "What if we win another $500,000?" And at that point, we've gone from what it was already an 8 cap to 7.5 cap.
Ouch.
In the small Midwest market. And when it came back, the broker says, "Listen, we need not only another $500,000, but probably $750,000." Of which, look, this partnership wanted us to do it, and we looked at it and said, "Guys, we're pulling."
Right.
There's no way, because at the end of it, we end up with potentially a bad relationship of never being able to be able to deliver what we needed to.
Right, in order to make a hotel that's actually profitable, because if you're trying to pay back that bank every month, the cash flow that you have to have starts to become so unreasonable. And right now, we're so at the top of the market, RevPAR is really starting to soften on a nationwide basis. You're not able to continue to make those amazing gains that we've seen during this 101 months of increased, RevPAR. So that makes a lot of sense, because, yeah, you could take the easy deal, but then you're going to have 5 years of pain, suffering, and hardship.
Every day.
Yeah.
So at the end of every month, of which, to your point, not only is it a bank issue, it's also you got to remember, with the investor that is now in our industry, they're promising returns to these equity partners. And a lot of times they're promising returns every month.
Yeah, right. So you've got to have positive cash flow every single month in order to make that work. So what's the process like in finding deals? You've been at this for a long time, so I guess it's a little different than if I'm just getting into figuring out how to do deals, because you already have many, many, many great relationships in place.
So I guess if I hear right, the question's how do I day-to-day look at it?
Yeah, I think so. I really want to start to dig down into what do you do every day? How do you find these deals? What's that process like? Because honestly, I watch you guys from all these conferences, and as I said earlier, I see the networking at the events, but I've never really peeled back the veneer of what you actually do on a day-to-day basis, other than hang out with people, have some cocktails, and all of a sudden deals are done, right? I know it's not that easy, and I'd like to know what you really do.
Well, if you ask my kids, that's what they say. They say, Dad, all I do is watch you come home and you're on the phone and well, how much is this going to cost and how much is that going to cost?
Right.
So to them, they think it's all fun and on the phone. But look, I think working channels constantly, and it's on all fronts. It's, for us, I probably look at it several-headed monster. I think it's working brands to see potentially where do they want to be, certain markets. Are there opportunities potentially where they may have, hey, we need to add a brand in certain cities.
And it seems the brands have gotten really good at identifying sites for specific brands and are almost teeing it up.
Correct. So then from there, it allows us to work with potential developers to say, okay, we know that Marriott wants to do a Moxie, for instance, potentially in St. Louis downtown. This is where they want to be. And so from there, we'll start working to locate land in situations like that. On existing assets, not only are you working the brands, but you're also working with existing groups that potentially have portfolios that are potentially on lives of CMBS loans that are coming due, or potentially, hey, they've had the asset, they bought it 5 years ago, probably had a life cycle of wanting to get out. So then we're making phone calls to say, hey, Bill, you guys looking at potentially trading anything soon to be able to do that. And then obviously, unfortunately, is looking at what's marketed there and seeing, hey, is there something that we see that maybe somebody else may miss, whether it's because of our knowledge in a particular market. And one of the things you asked in the beginning that we do is really trying to focus on where we are to build in our feet on the ground support mechanisms. And so when we look at certain markets, we may say, listen, we're going to build more in an Atlanta market or more in a New Orleans market within a 3-hour radius because we know we have support that we can bring more value to a particular project that may be out there. And so we'll work a market that way to be able to say, listen, while this project everybody else is looking at, we know for a fact we can go add 16 rooms to this building, and this current operator is missing that. And so we'll look at it and say, all right, it's a bad operator. We can come in and add value sheerly on operations or revenue management and end up underwriting it totally different. So you end up finding ways like that as well to change the dynamics of an existing operations.
Right. I think about myself for being a writer, editor for so many years, and I would have something called a story funnel because I'd have like daily deadlines. So I'd have to work on X amount of projects. So every single day, at least one of them would fall out of the bottom, and I'd be able to write it up and get it out the door. So I'm sure that it's the same kind of idea with you when it comes to that deal funnel, right? So how many deals do you have to work on at one time in order to make sure that you hit that yearly goal that you guys set for yourselves?
Well, we probably on a monthly basis are looking at anywhere from 25 to could range up to 40 deals a month.
Crap.
So you're trying to,
Wow.
I mean, look, and you have to be you have to make the right choice on what you're going to spend time on, but you also have to touch it because there could be the potential on a deal that meets the needs of one of our existing partners or clients or even potential clients. And so you do. And so, from our end, we do have someone on our team that's an analyst that will help me look at certain things and checks a box. And so if we quickly can run an analysis saying this is what our model on our averages would yield, then, hey, it gets to that next step.
Right. So you start off with a large amount of properties. Let's just say 40 randomly. Maybe 50% of those are not even worth looking at again. Then maybe half of those are worth considering a much more serious look. And then half of those are worth, like, maybe we should make a bid on it. Is that kind of the way that it winds up working out?
Yeah, it'll start there, and then it gets metal down. And by the end of the month, you're down working on what could be only 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And then with the 2 and 3, you'll get a surprise call from somebody saying, hey, we got a call about this out of the blue. Can we take a look at it? That happened a few weeks ago with a friend that out of nowhere we get a call about a potential project in Birmingham, Alabama, and we weren't even looking at it, nor did we know it was out there. And he says, I got a strike on this thing. We've been waiting, to look at it. Can you guys take a look? And now here we are 2 weeks into it. I'll fly out there Wednesday to take a look at the deal even deeper, and that came out of nowhere in the midst of me looking at 10 other deals.
Yeah. All right, so when you fly out somewhere and you take a look at the deal, are you just looking at financials, or are you walking around the hotel to get a feel of what that atmosphere is like?
No, at that point, I'm already looked at financials. I mean, I've figured out from a financial perspective, I've already tried to figure out, look, org chart-wise, how's the hotel set up? I'm trying to get a feel for, hey, can our model work in an asset? So we'll walk in to go, what would stop us from being able to change the dynamics? Are there mechanical issues? Are there building issues? What's the location like? Are there, barriers to entry to make the asset work? What's the surrounding areas? What's the comp set look like? At that point, I could care less what the financials look like. I've already done that. It's more so digging deeper to see what core issues could be at the asset or the surrounding area.
That way you avoid surprises and get a real clear sense of what some of the benefits can be. Because if there's something fundamentally flawed with, say, the culture at the property, that's probably something that you could come in and fix, which more quickly leads to higher profitability than if there's major infrastructure issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we just looked at one in San Antonio where we got a broker telling us it's worth X. And the renovations were just done a year and a half ago. We walk in, and as I'm walking through, I'm watching mechanical issues. One chiller's not even working. The elevators have done a remod, and I'm adding up the numbers, and I'm like, well, this is already close to $2 million in expenses. You're telling me that a PIP's only going to cost me $200,000. If we want to talk turkey, reality of this thing is it needs to be revalued. You're going to need to take $2 million off the price.
Right.
And so they did come back, and sellers saying, okay, look, you're probably right. We didn't realize we had some of these mechanical issues.
Wow.
So those are things that we will do to try and walk to see. And look, sometimes folks maybe won't walk. And I think that's the difference too, is if you're going to look at it, you got to touch it.
Yeah.
And that's a lot. You'd be surprised how many people don't touch it, and they'll sit there from afar in a desk and look at a number on paper and say, hey, we'll place a bid on it without even looking at it.
I see this bizarre disconnect all the time in regards to that. I see it in all aspects of the industry. In design, for example, I've said this before, but I still don't understand why a desk chair isn't at a reasonable height for, the desk itself, for example. So people just seem to not see a lot of these details. And I guess that's what separates the average player from the ones that wind up becoming superstars in the end.
Sometimes, look, even touching it, we don't always do it
right.
So trust me.
All right, so I want to switch topics a little bit. How do you become engaged as a development officer? Because I can't imagine that, you were saying, Mommy, Daddy, I want to be an astronaut or a development officer for a hotel company.
Osmosis, attrition. Look, I think as we've kind of matured as a company, we've had opportunities to bring different team members in to do different things. I think, I ran the company for a while. I think having that knowledge as a true operator makes the development side work. And one of the things Mike and I talked about for years is
that would be Mike Hines, the chairman of HB Hotels.
Thank you. We talked about, look, should we bring in someone on a development side? And as we would always interview or talk to different development teams that work other places, you really never truly had an operator's mindset behind it that could really talk and understand the nuts and bolts behind things. And so it was an easy fit for us when we brought Charles Oswald in, who's our CEO now, running the company and a partner, to allow him to run the company and for me to kind of move into a development role. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds where, look, we've built hotels, we've managed hotels, I've done that as well. And so you, through time, learn that piece, and there's still things today I learn day in and day out.
But that operational experience probably gives you a heightened sense of clarity that others must not realize that they don't have because they don't have that background.
Well, my arrogance tells me that.
Right.
So.
Excellent. Well, that makes sense. Before we wrap up, tell me a little bit about what's going on at HP Hotels these days. This meeting's been great. I think you have 44 properties as of this recording.
Well, I think it's actually 46 now in 17 states, and so we've. Look, we've been growing substantially in the last several years. Just alone, in the last 8 months, we're 15 hotels growth into the portfolio. We've really also grown from a human capital standpoint and kind of really preparing for that, knowing we were in a growth mode. We recently just this year started an advisory council that we brought in some industry professionals from different disciplines, from HR, from brand, from from technology. Really
he says industry professionals. What he really means is industry icons. People like Jim Holthauser, who used to be an EVP with Hilton, and Kirk Kinsell, who used to be like CEO of IHG and is kicking around the industry for years. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, we did. We lucked out, I think, with some folks that were, willing to give their advice and feedback and they saw what we had done in the past, but also wanted to be part of seeing us in the future. And the feedback that they've given us is, I think, allowed us to really do some things to set us up for success in the future. I think we've done a great job over the past and really being innovative to make changes with time. But I think one of the things we as a partnership looked ourselves in the mirror and said, what do we need to do for this next step? And we said, we need outside advice and counsel. And so I think it was a big leap of faith, but it's been refreshing to have these different voices, and it allows us to attack the technology piece, the cultural piece. We've got Jim Hardigan from Org-Wide that's on the council as well, and RP Rama. So RP brings an owner's point of view as well, which challenges too at the table. So I think it's well-rounded and welcomed.
Yeah, you have people that really represents all facets of the industry, so you can come together and have a conversation and understand what all of those different parts are to complete that whole vision of what you're trying to accomplish in the future.
Yep.
Wow, I like how I said that. I'm kind of impressed with myself with that one.
We might have to use that as a sales piece.
Yeah, I like it. Well, we'll make sure we get you a transcript of this. All right, so before we wrap up, I actually have one more question I have for you. You mentioned sometimes you put in sliver equity into projects, and I'm seeing that as almost becoming standard. Not quite, but much, much more desired by folks. Well, why do you think that is, and where do you think that's heading?
No, I think it's more and more. You're right. Look, a lot more people want to know that you're as invested in this deal as they are, and they feel like that's an important piece for you to be side by side with them and be invested with them, it's a bit different. And what's funny is we had owners yesterday sitting in our room in our session that, hey, our old hat owners that have been with us for years that we absolutely love and we wouldn't be where we are now without them, also challenge that to say, well, I'm not sure I like that. Because are you now competing with me? Which that's not the objective of us in investing. It's there to say, look, we're willing to partner with you, and we believe so much in what we're doing that we're putting our money where our mouth is. And that is where the new investor is, Glenn. But you also still have some of those ones out there that we can't and we won't. But at our core, it doesn't mean, look, we're a third-party management company.
Right. Yeah, and I'm just starting to feel like third-party management company means, all right, we also own a little piece of this, too, because it does show that confidence that you have in the project, and it really creates that put-up-or-shut-up kind of feeling that helps a lot of folks, not necessarily saying you, but helps a lot of companies go over the finish line and close that deal.
Well, it does, and it sets up your teams for the future as well. I mean, look, if we're talking succession planning and things like that, I think that's something we need to think about for our team. What is left for them as well, and that's, I think, what we're also trying to build for them is more. It's also bricks and mortar, and not just contracts out there.
All right, I know this is my third last question, but how does that change the dynamics of a management contract? Because you normally do 3 to 5 year deals, but if you own a portion of it, how does that work? Do you still own? If you no longer manage the company, you have to sell that? Do you still own it? Do you then get to yell at the other management company? How does that work?
A little bit of both. Yeah. So it would be set up there. There's definitely set up differently to where, one, you could be fired. Absolutely, you still would have ownership. But a lot of times it's tied in to where if you're let go, then you're also bought out of your shares potentially.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So, that makes sense. Good. Well, I got to tell you, Kerry, thank you so much for teaching me so much about how this whole development process works. He's laughing right now, but you live it and breathe it. You know everything about it. If you want to know about taking really bad pictures of food, then I'm your guy. But until then, thanks for teaching me today.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for having me on, too. I appreciate it.
And, Kerry, before we go, you got to do a shameless plug. How can we find HB Hotels? How can we find you? All that kind of good stuff. Anything you want to say?
HP-hotels.com is where you can find us online. And I'm at KV Ranson on Twitter.
All right, great. So to all of you, I hope you enjoyed this learning experience as much as I did. Now stick around, because on the other side of the commercial break, we got an amazing interview you surely will not want to miss. So for Kerry Ranson and myself, Glenn Hausman, thanks for listening.
Have a question for your host, Glenn? Tweet him now at Traveling Glenn. No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, Glenn here. Now listen, for me, one of the highlights of this past year's AHOA conference was learning all about the exciting stuff going on with Red Roof. For example, after comprehensive research into what travelers truly desire, Red Roof has created the Red Collection, a new group of mid-scale, unique hotels that are hyper-local and inspired by that city's vibe and culture. They all offer modern, accessible, and affordable accommodations, all within the proximity to the activities and sites travelers want to visit most. Like the St. Clair in Chicago, which is within walking distance of stores, restaurants, and museums all along the incredible, magnificent mile. Each property offers modern, accessible, affordable accommodations and the amenities guests ask for in their consumer research. Also included a loyalty program that just happens to be the richest in class and least expensive for franchisees, just 4%. And every property in the Red Collection has its own distinctive name, customized property enhancement plan, and brand standards based on consumers' wants rather than design mandates. And to top it off, the Red Collection gives franchisees opportunity to affordably invest in a sound brand with a solid track record. That's Red Roof's stellar management team. Finally, you'll be working with a company with franchise satisfaction rate of 94%. Wow! All those franchisees are going to tell you this, right? It's about genuine relationships, real results. That's just not some slogan. It's just how Red Roof operates. Learn more about the Red Collection. Just contact Phil Hugh. He's Red Roof's Chief Development Officer. Mail him at philhugh@redroof.com. That's Phil, P-H-I-L, Hugh, H-U-G-H. Phil Hugh at redroof.com, or just give him a call at 713-576-7676. 888-866-7417. Thanks for listening, and now back to the show.
Back to the show. It's No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast with your host, Glenn Hausman.
Welcome back to the No Vegas podcast with me, your host, Glenn Hausman. I hope you enjoyed that commercial break. I know I did. But I'm even more excited because it's the first time I'm getting a chance to speak with Dianna Vaughan. And if you don't know who she is, well, for shame. I'm embarrassed for you and me. And she's the SVP Global Head over at Hilton, in charge of all the All Suites brands, which includes Embassy, Homewood, and Home 2. How are you?
Woo, great. Thank you.
You like how I made that sound like I didn't just read that off of a piece of paper?
It was very natural.
I thought so. I was very proud of myself, which is, sometimes I get all nervous when it comes to saying these titles. Some people's titles go on and on and on that I get panicky halfway through them. So I like that sense of security. It's, having a piece of paper read a title off is kind of like Linus's blanket for me, honestly.
I'm impressed you got all 3 brands.
Yeah.
Usually people get 2 of 3. I mean, it's a lot of brands.
Well, when I was with Adrian Curry at the Lodging Conference in the fall of 2017, I missed one of the brands, and he gave me this look of death. In a friendly way, and then corrected me. And we had to
in a hospitable way.
Yes, and we had to reshoot the video. Well, everything from you folks is always hospitable. So, All Suites brands, you guys are doing a lot of stuff with 3 distinct personalities. I'm starting to see a lot of the major hotel companies now kind of rally behind All Suites and extended stay brands and really kind of put them in their own division. So I'm curious as to when this came about for Hilton, what the thought process was behind it. Then maybe we'll get into some of the individual stuff that you're doing.
Sure, you bet. Well, Hilton put their All Suites brands together about 2.5 years ago.
Right.
Because we found out we were really looking at some of the same customers and some of the same markets, and that our message could really be combined.
Right.
And a lot of the tools we were using internally could also find synergies.
Right, and that works well for you because with another layer of management, you get a promotion. So.
True.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you're thinking about these days when it comes to All Suites brands?
Well, one thing we're always focused on is, of course, our guest.
Right.
So we have a lot of listening posts from all of the comment cards we send from our hotels, the general managers. We also look at from the owners. We have owner advisory councils for all of our brands. We recently met with our All Suites owners in Dallas. And then, of course, from the developer's point of view, how do we keep these brands fresh and vibrant, making sure we meet the customer's needs,
right,
but also work with our owners. How can we be more efficient in building and cost? And where can we save space, or where do we need to add space? So those are the things that we're really working on right now. Also, our development strategy for these 3 brands. Where do we go? What's the brands that we take? What are the local prototypes that we need to adapt? You don't need to have a new prototype for every country, but how do we work with local developers and owners to make sure we've got what they need for their country?
Cool. All right, it's a great overarching picture. Let's drill down a little bit. You said how you do all these surveys and listening and stuff like that, but I know the truth. A lot of it is you hanging out at the Embassy Suites breakfast bar. You get your omelet.
Who told you?
You did before the microphone went on.
I thought it was Alan or Adrian.
Yeah.
Because they love when I go travel. I do exactly what you said. I get up. I'm one of the first people up in the morning to have breakfast. I'm waiting for the breakfast to open. I'm in a ponytail. I'm sitting there with my laptop, and I just observe breakfast for 2 hours. And I know the staff is thinking, why is that lady still here? Why is she? I don't identify myself.
Good.
But I talk to the team members, and I talk to the guest. And if it's a guest, I'll say, I really love this hotel. What, are you here on business?
Right.
People will tell you anything. It's a little bit of a different conversation than if you said, hi, I oversee the brand. Tell me what you think.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I used to make a big deal out of not identifying myself at hotels, but then I realized I'm a nobody and nobody cared. Anyway, what was I doing? But I think that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I used to do is I was an adjunct professor at NYU teaching consumer behavior, and I used to take the class to Whole Foods, right? This was 10, 12 years ago when it was new in Columbus Circle, right? And I thought it was really interesting. We would go and I'd give them a list of things that they should check out and observe. And we spent a lot of time watching how people experience the space. And I think that's really a great way to truly understand how people are doing something, as opposed to having them tell you what you want to hear, right? I think there's a real distinction there. So you've probably learned a lot just observing and watching and just kind of hanging out in the back.
Very true. I mean, Embassy, as you know from Alan, has had a huge renovation project going on in our lobbies, and I love to go.
Oh, I know. I was at one in, was it Virginia recently?
Tyson's Corner?
Yeah, yes, Tyson's Corner. Basically, the whole lobby was basically just ripped up at the time. You know, and there was just one little pathway to one elevator that was working. Lots of apology signs everywhere.
In a very tasteful way, right? It's no guest impact.
Honestly, it was the most tasteful sheetrock I've ever seen. The grays were just beautiful, but it was interesting to see how they were improvising and trying to get that going. But it was really symbolic to me about the big emphasis that you're putting on and reinventing some of these properties.
Yeah, so it's really important that we talk to our team members and guests as we're going through that renovation project,
right, of course.
To find best practices, to make sure that there is a nice way to get through the renovation. But also what I love to do is go after and talk to the team members and say, what do you like about the renovation? What's working well? And then you still have to ask, too, what did we miss?
Right.
Is there anything else? If you were in charge of this renovation, what would you do? And that's where we get the great information, because those team members are there experiencing it every day.
Is that property almost done?
It is.
At this
It
point?
is. You have to come back now.
I will come back. I actually I stayed there the night before. I had the wonderful opportunity to do a podcast with Larry Traxler. For those of you who don't know, he's the SVP of Design with Hilton. That one will be coming out soon. I know it's not out yet. It's part of the official design series that I'm doing, a 20-episode limited series. Sorry to do a sales pitch
No,
there.
totally fine. I love Larry.
Larry's a great guy. I hope you guys are going to enjoy that particular episode. But yeah, it's interesting to me to see how you have to try to keep these hotels fresh and in the consumer mindset, especially with these older buildings. So if you've got a brand that was so successful early on, then you've got all these challenges 20, 30 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have got a great plan in place. I know Alan and Adrian have shared with you both.
Yep.
And it really is important to make sure you're looking in the future, because, as you said, some of these buildings are a little older. So how do we keep them fresh and relevant for today's travelers?
Yeah, I really got into it with Alan. Just check out that podcast where I spoke with Alan Roberts. He's the global head of Embassy Suites. I think I ran that one in April-ish of 2018.
I did hear that.
So go back and check that one out.
And he talked a lot about the food and beverage enhancements you're doing at the brand,
which I thought was really great. Now, I've been a big fan of Homewood for a very, very long time, and it's been wonderful to see how that particular brand has come along over the years as well. Where are you feeling where you're at with this brand?
Homewood is just really at an exciting time because we have so many deals in the pipeline.
Oh, yeah?
Right now, we've got 459 open and 117 in the pipeline.
Geez, I remember when you got to, I think, 100.
I do, too. I know, it's home, too.
I think Jim Holthauser was still running the
He
brand
was.
at that time. He just recently retired. Such a great guy.
It's such a really good guy. Home 2 has 215 open, and it usually gets a little bit more of the press because it has over 400 hotels in the pipeline. But Homewood with over 100, not so shabby.
No, not so shabby at all. But there's a difference between Homewood and Home 2. I think as far as the developer goes, it's probably a little bit easier to get into creating a Home 2 than a Homewood. Although I could be completely wrong, but that's just kind of what my instinct is.
Yeah, and it's different market and different guest needs.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I stayed at my first Home 2. It took 200 openings for me to stay.
Wow. Well, thank you for finally joining us.
It was really embarrassing.
Where did you stay?
I stayed in York, Pennsylvania.
Oh.
I know. It's one of my favorite places.
Yeah. And how was your stay?
It was lovely. Yeah,
great.
It was nice. Actually, I'm thinking back now to the experience. I've probably been in 20, 30 hotels since then, but the lobby was really nice. It was big. It was open. It was very airy. It had glass walls all around it in the lobby area, which I thought was really terrific. Very nice contemporary furnishings, and
it really opens up the space with all the glass.
It really does. And I just kept hoping for nicer weather so I could actually sit on the other side of that glass where it was a nice seating area as well. Really, really terrific. But these brands have been so inculcated into the way that we think about hospitality here in the United States. What's going on internationally for you?
We're working with our international developers right now, working on our plan for Homewood and Home 2. I probably have something to share with you later half of the summer, but it is something that we're spending a lot of time on right now, really looking at which are the brands we're taking and where, and it's a global development strategy involving all of our brands.
Well, that sounds,
so more coming there.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting, and I wish I knew all about it. But you guys just stay tuned because towards the end of the summer, we'll...
you'll get the scoop for sure.
We'll reveal a little bit more. Thank you. And now that I have that that on tape.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to hold you. I'm going to hold you to it. What's the most exciting thing for you about your job these days?
I think really getting to engage with the team members.
Yeah.
It's just something. I'm a former general manager myself and miss being at the hotel. So I think just getting to travel and just getting the team members' point of view and engaging with them, that's what really gets me excited.
Well, if you miss being a general manager, I could just call you at 3 a.m. all the time.
That is
helpful.
true. You need quarters, right? Come on over. Get into the safe.
That's awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about your journey. You started working in your aunt's hotel at age 8?
At 8, yes. That was some child labor issues there, I believe we would say today.
I think we would. But back then, it was just the
back
course
then
of
it was
doing
fun.
business. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, back then my mom would drop me off when she needed a babysitter. And I, of course, thought I was not being babysat. I thought I was actually helping my aunt run her roadside inn in Houston, Texas.
Right.
So I would go over there and do anything from running towels up to doing dishes. She also had a little diner to greeting guests.
Fun.
It was a good time.
So did that instill in you the desire to be in the hospitality business?
Absolutely. I thought when I grow up, I want to own my own hotel, and I want to manage it myself because this is fun. Now, back then, that was in Texas. I thought I was getting to meet people from all over the world when, in actuality, it was Abilene, Waco, San Antonio. You know, it was my own little Texas world.
Right. Well, that, you know what? It is the whole world when you're
when you're a
that
Texan.
age. I think about. Well, I just think about like when I was in elementary school, and I used to think about how giant that school was and how large the property was. And then I'd go back there in high school for whatever reason there was, and I'm like, this place is really teeny
And the
tiny.
bathrooms are really small.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, you know, I get it where you come from. So then what? How did you go? How did you get to be a GM?
I always loved the hotel business just from my aunt owning one. And then that was my first unpaid job. My first paid job going to school, I was a night auditor. And I think you learn so much being on the night audit. You're 19 years old. At the time, I was often the only team member at the hotel on the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. So you're in charge.
Nice.
You're running that
love
hotel. So I thought, wow,
Nothing
I've
changed
run
since you were
the
8.
hotel. I should be a GM.
Yeah.
So worked my way up to front office through food and beverage, AGM, directors of sales and marketing, and then finally became a GM. So it was a natural progression, just something that a lot of our operators have done. They start out in the business and then just work their way up. And then actually Phil Cordell gave me a call when I was an Embassy Suites GM and said, hey, would you be interested in coming to Memphis, which is where we were headquarters at the time, and oversee a portfolio of hotels and help them with their marketing and revenue management. And I said, sounds like a great idea. And so that's when I jumped over to the corporate life. And then from there, went to Beverly Hills, when Hilton acquired Promise and was VP of marketing for DoubleTree, helped Hilton launch brand performance support and franchise services globally.
Wow.
And then had the opportunity to move to McLean when we moved our offices there and launch our Curio and Tapestry brands. So I've really had a great time just going in and out of all different departments of the business.
Wow.
And now today I'm overseeing the 3 All Suites brands.
When did you start your current assignment as SVP Global Head with the All Suites
In
brands?
January this year.
In January of this year. So that must have been interesting to change jobs yet again. Natural evolution.
What are you
of where
saying
you've been
again?
going. Because you keep moving your way up. You are a rock
I thought you were
star.
saying I can't hold a job or something.
That I don't know. Maybe it's one of those government things where they just keep promoting you up to get you out of there. I don't know.
I love it. I love
you
it.
seem capable to me. I could be completely wrong. You don't want to trust my judgment. But what was that like starting in a new position, all of a sudden having 3 brands? Yeah, you've done the launch and stuff like that, but it's something new. It's something different. It's the first time you really.
Well, and it feels like I've actually come home since I was a former GM with the Embassy brand, and I lived in Memphis many years ago. It really felt very natural. I've stayed in touch with several of the GMs, and I feel like I've always kind of had one foot in the door for the All Suites brands. So it was a pretty natural transition.
So here's my most important question of the day. Being that you were so involved in Embassy, how do you like your eggs made to order?
I like an omelet. Nothing better than a good omelet with a little spinach, a little cheese, tomato.
Yeah.
I always start off every day with an omelet when I'm at Embassy.
I love it. Yeah, so same with me, which I'll be doing tomorrow morning because we are staying at an Embassy this evening. I can't wait.
Great. Are you going to be up one of the first people there? Because
No.
Well, I'll be there. I'll be looking for you.
But no, don't bother. We're here as we're recording this. We're getting set for the NYU Hospitality Financial Investment Conference, and I'm going to probably be out way too late, going to
True.
drinking and hanging out and doing all the things that
that you must do as part of your job.
All the stuff that my wife thinks I don't do anymore. All of that fun stuff.
We won't tell her.
Well, don't
she
worry.
doesn't listen to these, does she?
She has no interest in what I do.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Understand.
Yeah. So what's the most exciting thing for you right now when it comes to the future of hospitality? And I'm thinking along the lines of adapting to the changing consumer mindset.
That's a great question. I think there's so many things that we're working on right now at Hilton, from innovation to our purpose platform and how do we work with our communities. I think the thing I'm really excited about is connecting with our communities. Hilton just launched, I'm sure you saw, several initiatives in cutting back on our footprint and dealing with straws and plastic, and that really gets me excited because not only are we building great hotels and working with fantastic team members, but we're also connecting with our communities.
Here's the thing that frustrates me. I'm trying so hard to get rid of the straw thing from my existence, but people still.
You like a straw?
No, I don't like the straw. I've never been passionate about the straw, honestly. In fact, I never understood why they bring you a straw with water. I felt it was superfluous, right? But they still bring straws all the time. They do that thing where they rip off part of it,
and leave the top part on. They don't want to touch the top of your straw.
Right. Which I get that, but just ask if you want a straw. So if you folks out there don't know what we're really talking about, there's a big movement to get rid of straws out there. Do you happen to know how many are used every day? It's like 200 million or something silly like that, right?
Yes.
That's just a whole lot of plastic that we don't need to be putting into our environment. And I'll tell you, it's a great thing, but I do feel sorry for the guys that make straws. They're really getting the bum end of this deal.
They'll reinvent themselves. They'll do something new.
So how important do you think is sustainability overall for Hilton? You talk about reducing your footprint, and she doesn't mean making her feet smaller. She means the sustainability and environment.
Yeah, it's very important. It's something we're all very committed to. You will hear Chris Nassetta talk about it every time he's in public. And it's our future. It's our kids' future. So I think it is very important.
So how do you think about that when it seems like our administration isn't as concerned as they used to be in protecting our environment? You just move ahead and say, what the hell?
I think we move ahead on our own.
Yeah.
I think we shouldn't look to others to help us move something along. If we can do it ourselves, it's great if we're all aligned together, but it shouldn't stop us. We should just move forward.
So what are some of the things that you're doing then to make sure that Hilton hotel products and all suites and beyond are more environmentally sustainable?
Yeah, one thing we are looking at is every hotel tracks all and everything that they're doing to help limit the impact, and then we're sharing best practices. So our Clean the World, our soap initiative, is something that the All Suites have been doing for many years, and several of our other brands will be jumping on board with that as well. But the important thing is getting the team members or the guests involved. So for our soap program, we really showed the team members, when you're collecting all the soap, where it's going,
right,
and what a difference it's making. You're not just collecting soap, you're giving it to a country or a city where cleanliness of your hands can really lower infections and disease.
That's all serious, but you should give it to my kids. I'd give it to my kids. I'd like them to meet soap once in their life. But teenage boys.
We'll send you some soap. I've got some in my room. I'm going to save it, and I'll find you tomorrow.
Yes, at 3 a.m. at the
I will
breakfast
find
bar.
you. I'm gonna get my soap, whatever's left, and it's coming your way.
Awesome. So, anything else that we need to know about with what your universe is going on these days?
No, it's just very exciting, and look for more information coming on where we're going next.
All right, excellent. So, hey, I know I'm excited. I'm going to be holding my breath until the end of the summer, until you're allowed to tell me more kind of fun stuff. But I can't wait to find out what that's going to be. Any parting words?
No, just thanks for always being such a great partner for Hilton. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. I love what you guys are up to, and I love to follow the continuing story. I want to thank Dianna Vaughan, SVP Global Head, All Suites Brands, Embassy, Homewood, Home 2. I got that out in one breath this time, and I want to thank all of you guys for listening. We'll be back the next time, unless I decide to hit that omelet bar too early and cannot put out another show. See you all next week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to No Vacancy, the hospitality industry's #1 podcast, with your host, Glenn Hausman, online at rouse.media, on Twitter at Traveling Glenn, and on Facebook.com/Glenn.Hausman. We'll catch you next time.